Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the Alicia Branham podcast. Today, we're going to talk about why your business feels harder than it should, right? Listen, let me say something that might hit a little close to home. If your business feels harder than it should, if things feel heavier, more complicated, more frustrating than you expected, it's probably not your market. And honestly, it's probably not your team. And it's not because you're not working hard enough. No, that's not it either. Honestly, the problem is how you are showing up as a leader. Because here's what I see all the time. Strong businesses, smart leaders, great products, capable teams, and yet everything feels harder than it should. Decisions take too long, communication feels off, people aren't aligned, tensions build under the surface, and the assumption is, well, we need better strategy, we need better people, we need to fix operations. But that's not the root of the problem. Most of the time, what you're dealing with is an emotional intelligence gap, and most leaders don't even realize it. Let's talk about what this actually looks like. Emotional intelligence is not complicated. It's your ability to be aware of yourself, control how you respond, communicate clearly, and handle people well, especially when things are not going well, right? That's it. That's it. But here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of people were not taught this, not in school, not early in their careers, and for a lot of people, not even growing up. So what happens is you have really smart, capable, driven people operating in leadership roles without ever developing the skills to manage themselves under pressure. And that's not an insult. That's just reality. If those skills weren't modeled for you, if you didn't grow up around healthy communication, if you didn't see people handle conflict well, you don't just automatically know how to do that as a leader. You don't. When I started Brand, I was a solopreneur for years. As Brand grew and I started adding in staff, I kept feeling like this is so much harder than I thought. Not that running a business is easy for anyone. And I had to take a hard look at myself and see that the problem was actually me. The problems I was having with new staff was surrounded in communication issues that I was having from not being able to communicate effectively as a leader, right? So here's the challenge. Most people don't even realize that this is an issue for themselves. They don't. They think the problem is external. They think that their team isn't strong enough. There's too much on their plate. The environment is the problem, right? So they keep trying to fix those things, but they never, ever stop to ask, how am I showing up to this? How am I responding under pressure? Because the truth is, it's not just what's happening around you. It's how you're handling what's happening around you. And if you're not aware of that, you'll keep trying to fix the wrong problem, right? And that's why it keeps feeling hard for you, right? Listen, in business, you're taught how to grow revenue, right? They teach you how to sell, how to market, how to scale, right? But no one teaches you how to handle pressure without reacting, how to give feedback without creating tension, how to address issues without avoiding them, or how to lead people even when emotions are involved. And that's where things start to break. This is exactly where businesses start to feel harder than it should be, right? And it shows up in your business something like this. You're in too many decisions because you don't fully trust your team. Your team hesitates because they're unaware how you're going to respond. Communication gets filtered because people are trying not to create conflict. And instead of things moving faster as you grow, everything slows down because you're the problem that needs to be fixed. All right, so I have got to tell you a really hard business moment for me. When I first started my business, I hired someone that I used to know from my yoga studio, and she used to be a roommate at our house for a while, a really nice lady. And I knew she was a project manager for a really big architecture firm in town. And we were joking one day about her working for me. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to hire this friend of mine and bring her in, and she's going to help me help me run my business. And what I found out pretty quickly is that's not at all what happened. And I didn't think that I needed to be really involved. I just assumed things were going to happen because remember, I'm a solopreneur. I never managed a team before. I never had employees before. And what happened because I refused to have conversations or having conflict with this woman, I kept making Band-Aids inside my business for her, right? And then at the end of her first year, when I got with my bookkeeper and we sat down and she says, hey, Alicia, did you know that blank so-and-so didn't bill out a third of their time last year? And I was like, huh? What you telling me? She's like, a third of her time, Alicia. That was $100,000 loss in revenue for my business. Okay. And so I had to learn pretty quickly that I really needed to get over myself. And just because a business is small doesn't mean that you don't need to have specific things in place. And so I learned the hard way because my lack of communication that communication is really important in your business. And I learned that by hiring my first bad hire, right? She didn't last the year. She quit. I was grateful, but it was a really hard lesson for me as a business owner. And that's when you realize in a moment like this, right, that it's not just the situation, it's how you're showing up inside the situation. This connects directly to what we talked about in the last episode, right? Hard conversations. I didn't want to have a hard conversation with that gal because if you don't trust yourself to handle emotions, you avoid the conversation, right? And when you avoid the conversation, the problem does not go away. It just compounds, friends. Here's where leaders get this wrong. They focus on what's happening externally. They're not doing their job. They don't understand. We need better people instead of asking, how am I contributing to this, right? As a leader, you have to realize that it all flows through you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Have you heard about the concept of extreme ownership? It's a leadership philosophy developed by two retired Navy SEAL officers. Its core premise is that a leader bears absolute responsibility for everything in their world, including the actions of their subordinates, failures, and successes. In every situation in my business, if something doesn't go right, ultimately, it falls upon me to take ultimate responsibility. Listen, there are no bad teams, there are only bad leaders, and I intend to be the best leader that I can be. Listen, there's a moment in leadership, right, when you have to get honest with yourself, where you realize it's not them, it's me. And that's a hard place to get to, right? But it's also the moment that everything starts to change. Because when emotional intelligence is low inside of a business, it creates friction everywhere. You get broken trust. People second-guess communication. They don't feel safe saying what needs to be said, right? You get discouraged teams, disengaged people. People stop speaking up. They stop taking initiative. And you know what? You get turnover. And leadership says, oh, we can't find and keep good people. But they don't look at the environment that they're creating, right? And you get poor decisions made out of frustration, made out of ego or pressure instead of getting clarity, right? This is why your business feels harder than it should. Not because growth is hard, but because leadership without awareness makes everything heavier. When you make decisions based in anger in the moment, you're only hurting yourself because in that moment, you're not the best version of yourself, are you? And you shouldn't be making any decisions from this place, right? It only hurts you and your business. So what does this actually require of you, right? This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming an aware leader, right? And it starts with awareness before action. Instead of reacting immediately, what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what's actually happening here? What's my role in this? And it requires a discipline of communication to be that way, right? Saying what needs to be said clearly, directly, without avoiding it, but also without making it personal. And it requires emotional control under pressure because leadership gets tested not when things are easy, but when things are uncomfortable, right? And as a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, I've been on a mission to build brand marketing into something bigger, an employee-owned business. And part of building the kind of company I always wanted to dream of working for means that I need to show up differently, right? It means I have to lead and not be afraid to stand up for the business I've spent years building. This year, especially in the first quarter, I challenged myself to do something I'd been avoiding. I had to have really difficult conversations with some of my original clients, the ones who'd been with me from the very beginning, since 2017, and those were not easy conversations for me because I had to talk to them about raising rates significantly, right? And if I'm being honest, I had put that off for a really long time. I did not want to make them uncomfortable. I didn't want to risk the relationship, right? But at the same time, I'm building a real business. I have employees, I have payroll, I have taxes. I am building benefits for my team, and avoiding those conversations, that wasn't leadership. It wasn't. So I had them. And not just with my long-term clients, but with newer, lower fit clients as well, right? And here's what happened. My team saw it. They saw me step into those conversations. They saw me make hard decisions. They saw me lead. And you know what that outcome was? My business got stronger. We increased revenue. We let go of clients who were creating a distraction for us. And they weren't aligned with us, to be honest with you, right? And where we were going. And what that created was a better environment for our team. More focus, less chaos, more alignment. And that's the kind of company I'm building, right? One that feels strong, clear, and intentional. Your team doesn't just respond to your direction, friends. They respond to your energy, your tone, your reactions, your consistency. You are setting the emotional standard for your business, whether you realize it or not. So, if your business feels harder than it should right now, I want you to ask yourself a few honest questions, okay? Where am I reacting instead of leading? Where am I avoiding conversations because I don't trust myself to handle them, right? Where is my lack of clarity? Is it creating confusion for my team? Because when you fix this, everything gets lighter. Communication gets clearer. Decisions get faster. Your team gets stronger. And your business starts to feel the way you thought it was supposed to feel all along, right? Your business isn't harder than it should be. You're just being asked to lead at a much higher level, right? Listen, I really want to thank you for listening to this episode today. And if it resonated with you, share this with another business owner who might need to hear it. And if you want more conversations about leadership, mindset, and building something meaningful, follow me and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Alicia Branham Podcast.